Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the best wildcard team for Gameweek 19. There are a few key changes from the last edition, so be sure to watch through the video and see my explanations for each one of my picks. And I'm going to go through the entire 50-man squad. Just for a bit of context, the scores you see on the left-hand side are from blank Gameweek 18. I haven't updated it yet after the two games that have happened so far in Gameweek 19. And also we have seen the lineups here of West Ham versus Man United, so Areola is in it, and you can go for him as a backup goalkeeper, but I'll discuss my personal favourites in each position and talk about the starting 11 for Gameweek 19, as well as the squad depth, the captaincy, and much more. If you haven't enjoyed this video, smash the like button, subscribe for new. We are around 20-30 subscribers away from 22,000, and our aim before the end of the year is to get to that milestone, so that'd be greatly appreciated. And let's also get this video to the 200 likes, and if that's the case, there'll be a team selection video, transfer tips, reaction stream, and then of course the deadline stream for Gameweek 19. Without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. Despite Areola featuring a goal against Manchester United, and let's see how West Ham fare later on, I'd still go for Martin Dubravka. I think Newcastle are more solid defensively, they'll keep more clean sheets, and especially at St James's Park, I think that's a fortress where they rarely concede goals, only 4 goals conceded throughout the season, and Dubravka at that price is a bargain in my opinion. He hasn't been that great so far since he's come into the team to replace the injured Nick Pope, but overall, I still think Newcastle will get some key players back, Sven Botman, Fabian Schär once he returns from injury, and once they can settle a little bit, I think Newcastle will go on a good run and they could compete for a top 4 finish or maybe top 6, and I think Dubravka could be a solid option in goal as a result. Now, I've discussed the best goalkeepers in detail in the last couple of weeks. I've discussed the names of Raya, Alisson Becker, Emi Martinez and Pickford are also decent options, but the second choice I'm going to go for is Bernd Leno, who is still the highest scoring goalkeeper at the time of this recording, and he's also got a good chance of one today against Burnley at home. But Leno for me is just a great option for bonus points and saves. There's a reason why he's got more points than Alisson Becker, although it's very close between those two and Onana. They're the top 3 highest scoring goalkeepers at the moment, but I would go for these two, and it would roughly cost you around 9 million to assemble these two goalkeepers, and that gives you a lot of flexibility and funds to invest in the outfield players. I still firmly believe Saliba is the best Arsenal defender in the long term, but up until February, I think Zinchenko is safe from rotation. He should start the vast majority, if not all, Premier League games for Arsenal, and he's got the bonus points and assist potential over William Saliba. Those two are certainly the best Arsenal defenders at this moment in time. Gabriel is fine as a cheap alternative, and then David Raya in goal is always a good choice, but Zinchenko for me is a very good option. I think he'll score the most points of any Arsenal defender up until February, which is when Timber should be back from injury from his ACL that he sustained in Gameweek 1. And also, you look at Tomiyasu, who will be off to the Asian Cup shortly after returning from his injury around the 7th of January in that clash against Liverpool in the FA Cup. But I think Zinchenko is a good option, and with the way this squad is set up, you can deal with these future transfers that you have to make potentially around February. But if you want to avoid that, just go for Saliba, as I've discussed in pretty much all of my wildcard videos. I still think he's a very good option there, but I think Zinchenko has a higher upside, and with that lower ownership, I think it's a great way to climb the ranks up until February. Now, the next defender is someone who just came back from an injury. He's a decent budget option. I had him in my team for around a week or two earlier in the season, and that's Dan Burn. I think it's a good way to cover the Newcastle defence with Kieran Trippier being off form. And look, I still like Kieran Trippier, but you also have to find ways to open up the funds to get Erling Haaland back into your squad around Gameweek 20, and as a result, I want to keep some money in the bank in order to make that possible and not force you to take -4s or -8 hits straight after playing the wildcard in Gameweek 19. So as a result, I would go for Dan Burn instead of Kieran Trippier. That's not to say I think Burn will outscore Trippier. Far from it. I still think Trippier is one of the best defenders in the game, and it will be a good battle between Trent and Trippier to become the highest scoring FPL defender this season. Speaking of which, I think Trent Alexander-Arnold is still a great option in your team, and it is possible to keep Trent and also have the likes of Erling Haaland in your team in Gameweek 19 or Gameweek 20, but that would mean sacrificing the likes of Heung-min Son, Saka, or Salah, and I think that's perfectly reasonable considering that in Gameweek 21, Heung-min Son and Salah go after the Asian Cup and the African Cup of Nations, and in that period between Gameweeks 21 to 24, you would probably want to spread the funds a little bit, but also bear in mind that you probably want these options back around Gameweek 25 when both of them should be available and they could go on a great run until the end of the season. But Trent Alexander-Arnold is matching the likes of Salah and Erling Haaland in terms of FPL points, and I think since Gameweek 8, he's actually surpassing the two of them. So it goes to show what tremendous value Trent Alexander-Arnold offers in the heart of the defence. And that just leaves 2 spots for the defenders. I still like Aston Villa defenders there from time to time. They aren't the greatest defensively. I've always said this. They kept back-to-back clean sheets against Arsenal and Manchester City. But I think against the lesser teams, Aston Villa focus more on attack and they leave themselves vulnerable at the back. And of course, you saw that against Sheffield United yesterday, even though they were a bit unlucky with some refereeing decisions and also a few other factors there. But Aston Villa can be a bit of an iffy team sometimes. I think at home, they're still very consistent. They're unbeaten for a reason and have the best home record. But away from home, I would be a bit concerned about Aston Villa. I think they're a bit inconsistent and some of the results have been a bit fortuitous on their travels. But as a result, I would go for Colwill and purely play it on the fixtures. I'm not a big fan of Chelsea defenders, but I think Colwill is the best of a relatively bad bunch. Apart from Colwill, who could you go for? Ozzy Konza would be a shout. Pau Torres, once he returns from injury. Then you look at Mikalenko, same thing. Once he comes back from his injury, he's a great shout. Same of Tarkowski, Branthwaite. But I think I'd go for Colwill on the wildcard at this moment in time. And for the last defender, it is Pedro Porro for the attacking potential. I've discussed him in detail in the last couple of weeks. I think he's a great option for that. He's also on set pieces while James Maddison is out. And even when the English playmaker returns from injury, I still think Pedro Porro offers enough attacking potential from open play to justify an inclusion in your FPL team. After that top of the table clash between Liverpool and Arsenal, Saka could make it 3 blanks in a row, but I still think he's one of the most consistent FPL options out there. And once Son and Salah go after the respective cup competitions in Gameweek 21, Saka will be one of the very best midfielders, if not the best midfielder in the game, and a great way to replace those 2 options. So I think Saka has to be in your team in the long term, and if you want to compensate and go for Odegaard or Martinelli, you can do so. But from what I've seen this season, I don't think they really stack up to Saka in terms of sheer consistency with goals and assists, and especially in Martinelli's case, who has been playing quite well, but he's not getting the goals or the assists. I think Odegaard is coming into some good form and he's getting those goal contributions, but I still think Saka is on another level in terms of that consistency, and he'll be the closest to Son and Salah in terms of goals and assists combined. So I would go for Saka. There is no doubt about that in my mind. Now, the second midfielder will be a very interesting one because I'll be honest, I don't fully trust this player, but Richarlison should be mentioned. He is playing down the middle. There could be the odd occasion where he plays on the left whilst Heung-min Son is still here. But in Gameweek 21 onwards, Richarlison will be the undisputed number 9 there for Tottenham Hotspur. And Spurs could be struggling in some games, to be fair, with no James Maddison and no Heung-min Son in some of those games. But Richarlison should still do fairly well, and he'll be the main attacking threat for that Tottenham Hotspur side. He's in good form, 3 goals in his last 2 games. Let's see how he does against Everton at home later on, his former club. And I don't think it's really that bad to take a punt on a Richarlison at this stage. He will become a fairly template pick, I think, around Gameweek 21 onwards, but you can go a bit early on the wild card or with free transfers and buy him as soon as Gameweek 19. I don't think Brighton away is a bad fixture for attackers. So Richarlison does make it into a wildcard team. It does seem like a miracle. I'm not his biggest fan, to say the least, but let's see what you can do over the next month or so. The next midfielder is Cole Palmer. Very simple stuff. He is just an absolute game breaker in terms of value. He's on penalties, very good from open play now. He's getting those goals. There's a lot to like, and Chelsea still have tremendous fixtures up until February. Now, the fourth midfielder I'm going to go for is someone who's off to the African Cup of Nations in Gameweek 21, and that is Mohamed Salah. You could also go for Heung-min Son and compare the 2 fixtures coming up. Brighton away and Bournemouth at home for Son, compared to Burnley away and Newcastle at home for Mohamed Salah. But out of the 2, I would still rather go for Salah in this context because you have Richarlison to cover the Spurs attack, And I also look at Salah as a really good captaincy option, probably the best in Gameweek 19. So as a result, I would go towards Salah over Son on the wildcard right now. But conversely, for my own team situation, having both Son and Salah, I might sell Son in Gameweek 21 and sell Salah in Gameweek 20 to then fund Erling Haaland. So I don't think it's a clear-cut answer there, but ultimately for Gameweek 19, I think the Salah captaincy debate there, away to Burnley, I think is enough to include him over Heung-min Son in this wildcard team. Now, the final midfielder is Jarrod Bowen. The fixtures don't look particularly great, especially over the next couple. It's Arsenal away next, which is one of the toughest games you can get in the Premier League. But Jarrod Bowen can score against the Gunners. He did it earlier this season in the Carabao Cup. He also did it last season, I think, in both matches. He won a penalty at the Emirates in a 3-1 loss, and then he also was one of the catalysts for that comeback in that 2-2 draw at the West Ham Stadium, the London Stadium. So I think Jarrod Bowen is absolutely fine. He's a consistent option that ticks along nicely. He will score in most games. Some people may ask, where's Lucas Paqueta? I still think Jarrod Bowen is far more consistent. Ward-Prowse is also a decent shout. Soucek. I think West Ham have a lot of good FPL options at their respective price points. And of course, we can't forget Kudus, but he's off to the African Cup of Nations. And I'm a bit wary with this wildcard squad to include too many Asian or African players who have international commitments from Gameweek 21 onwards. That's why there's no Heung-min Son. If it wasn't for that, of course he will be in this team over Richarlison. There's no doubt in my mind about that. Let's now head over to the free forwards where things are still quite similar, but overall we have to have that contingency plan to bring back Erling Haaland in Gameweek 19 or 20. I'm still opting for the structure where you have a budget option like an Archer or a Semenyo, and the reason why I've gone for Archer over Semenyo is because Semenyo will be off to the African Cup of Nations as well, and that's something you need to factor in. So Archer could be useful off the bench at times, and he's not going to be off to the African Cup of Nations, so as a result, you just go for him as a budget option. But there's actually one other forward that could be a great shout, and it all depends if he starts today, so let's keep an eye on it. Instead of Archer, one option could be great over the next couple of weeks while Raul Jimenez is injured, and that is Muniz. It's between those two, I think, as the best budget forward at this moment in time. I still like Semenyo, but because he's heading off to AFCON in Gameweek 21, I would go for either Muniz or Cameron Archer, and I think that's where it lies. So it really depends on if Muniz gets the nod against Burnley, and if he's starting games for Fulham in the meantime and could nail down a spot, he could be great value at 4.4 million. He just came back from an injury as well. As for the other two forwards, it would be Ollie Watkins, who has been very disappointing, especially in recent home games. I think he's only delivered 6 points against Fulham, and he's blanked against the likes of Luton Town, Sheffield United, Arsenal, and Manchester City at Villa Park. So he has been very disappointing. A lot of us may have captained him, over 2 million FPL managers overall, so he can be a very frustrating figure. I think he's someone you don't really captain. You just have him in your team until the end of the season because he ticks along nicely. He's very consistent, but he doesn't have that ceiling really to captain him over a Son or a Salah in the long term. So that's something that I will address in future videos too. But the last forward is Dominic Solanke. You can go for Erling Haaland from the get-go, especially if it looks like he will be available for Gameweek 19. But I think that could be a bit too soon for Erling Haaland. Some reports indicate that he could be out until January, so he could miss Gameweeks 19 and 20. But I personally believe he will be available for that Sheffield United fixture. And as a result, you need to have a way to buy him back. And that could involve selling Salah in Gameweek 20 and then using those funds to upgrade Muniz or Solanke to Erling Haaland. In terms of the starting 11, I would go for Dubravka over Leno in Gameweek 19 because I don't trust Fulham to keep a clean sheet against Bournemouth, who are in form at this moment in time, and Newcastle are very strong at St James's Park. The defensive three would be Dan Burn, Zinchenko and Trent. The midfield five would be Saka, Richarlison, Bowen, Palmer and Salah. The front two would be Watkins and Solanke. Also a very strong bench here with Leno, Colwill, Pedro Porro and Cameron Archer. So it'll be difficult, I think, sometimes with this amount of squad depth. And imagine if you have three forwards as well, Haaland in for Archer or Muniz, depending on your pick there for your budget choices. But in terms of the captaincy, I think Salah is probably the best option in Gameweek 19. And in terms of the vice captaincy, with the players that we have, I'd probably go for a Saka, even though he's not the best option, maybe compared to a Son or a Salah. I don't think his ceiling is as high, but what you get with Saka is sheer consistency. He's got a great chance of hauling in most of the games coming up in this festive period. all the way up until the end of the season. And we have 4.2 million in the bank. It would be even more, by the way, if you don't go for Archer and instead go for Muniz. So it all depends there. 4.4 million in the bank with the Fulham striker in your ranks. But in terms of getting Erling Haaland back, one of the downsides of wildcarding to this squad is that you'd have to take a -4 hit to buy Erling Haaland back for Game Week 20 when he faces Sheffield United at home. So that could be an issue. 63.4 expected points, as you can see on screen with this setup. But in terms of Game Week 20, what you could do is buy Erling Haaland for Solanke and also buy Odegaard there for Mohamed Salah for a -4 hit. That's certainly not ideal. At the time of this recording, he's only blanked once at Anfield all season, and that was against Manchester United. Let's see how he does against Arsenal too. But Erling Haaland is definitely worth that -4 hit in my opinion. But one other thing you could do to keep Solanke, who's a good option in the long term, is to go for Gordon instead of Martin Odegaard, and that would allow you enough money in the bank to keep Solanke, and instead you'd be selling Muniz as your budget option to Erling Haaland. So that's what you could do in order to afford the Norwegian striker. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. And Anthony Gordon has some poor fixtures straight after. You see there, Liverpool away, Aston Villa, Man City, all back-to-back. But overall, he's a great long-term option, and it's worth buying him back if you don't go for him on the wildcard in Game Week 19. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I think one other potential issue with this wildcard team is the rotation from time to time between Leno and Dubravka. And if you're not happy with that, you look at Arsenal at home there for the Fulham shot stopper and Liverpool away there for Dubravka. And then I think in the next week, it's Man City for Dubravka, whilst Leno has Chelsea away. You can go for an Emi Martinez, Jordan Pickford, Raya, or Alisson Becker instead. I still like those options, but I think if you were to deviate away from Bernd Leno, I think I would go for David Raya personally and double up on that Arsenal defence, as I personally believe they have the best defence, and also up until this point in the season they've got the least shots conceded, also including shots on target, the lowest XG conceded, and generally speaking they're a very solid unit, and most of the goals they concede are down to individual mistakes. So just to recap, if we go back to Game Week 19, this is the best wildcard team. I've shown you a plan to get Erling Haaland back, which involves selling Solanke and Salah to the likes of Odegaard or Bruno Fernandes plus Erling Haaland, but you can also go all the way down to a Gordon instead of Odegaard, and then that will give you the funds to buy Erling Haaland for Muniz or any budget striker you have. So like I said, if you don't want to go for Bernd Leno, you don't like that rotation between Newcastle and Fulham in terms of fixtures, you can go for David Raya instead and start him in most Premier League games. And I think with Dubravka, you only really start him when Newcastle are playing at St James's Park. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to the 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 22,000 subscribers and beyond. We're around 30 subscribers away from that milestone, so let's hit it before the end of the year. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, and Draft Pound. It's all there in the description for you. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 19 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.